Yes, it is. Also, I've got a few photos and screenshots and so on. Maybe I can show them during while I'll talk and share my screen. Maybe that could be interesting.
Yes, yes.
All right, very good.
So, Alexander, it's nice to meet you, interview again. And
yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Completely new work, right? Sleep Laboratory. It's your work for VR technology, as I understand. Can you just a little bit tell about setup, right?
Yes, I can. I mean, yeah, thanks for inviting me again. It's actually interesting because I think the last time we spoke about Perfect Circle, and to a certain degree, actually the Sleep Laboratory is kind of a continuation of that project, but maybe I can say something about that later on also. But it takes some of the immersive, more video-based pieces that I've done that dealt with body interaction and spaces through transmission of video technology, and now applies that to the actual VR world. So it's really a kind of a continuation of things that I've been doing, or porting some of the ideas to the virtual reality, and it's really a kind of a continuation of a Perfect Circle. So it actually makes sense to talk about this here. Yes, talking about the setup of the piece. So, I mean, in general, the Sleep Laboratory is an immersive, participatory installation that goes on for 1 hour, and it's open for 12 people. So every hour, 12 people come in and engage in the setting, and they arrive as a group and are then paired in pairs of 2. So we've got 6 pairs, and each of these pairs go into one smaller compartment. So we've built a set design, or a setup that's a bigger structure that consists of 6 individual compartments, and each of these compartments is is used by 2 people of the audience and 1 performer of the ensemble. So we've got 18 people in total, and in each compartment there are 3 people. And the basic idea for the piece was to build something that is, as the title suggests, based on a sleep laboratory, and using VR technology to kind of to create this dream world, this imaginative world. This is kind of where we started, and in the end, I think it turned out it's still that, and it's still reflected in how the physical setup is done. But in the end, it's about something, I think, more general in the end. So maybe before I explain more what actually happens, I can maybe summarize what, at least to me, the piece is about. It's about using VR technology to look at yourself, at another person, and at the space that you're in, and kind of question how you perceive it. And it is done with VR technology, but within the piece, only half of the time you're actually wearing the headset. So as the piece goes along, you're taking the VR headset off and on. So you are kind of comparing how you perceive what is happening in real life and how you perceive it in VR. So this is kind of a long line in what I've been doing, also reflected in that book that I wrote, Switching Worlds, this kind of comparison process between the analog real world, if you want to call it that, and a kind of technology mediated, or in this case, more simulated world. So yeah, that's the, let's say, the big brackets around this piece. And in order to achieve that, what we did is we built these the setup, these compartments, and in each compartment there's a bed, and there's a chair next to the bed, and the whole thing is made out of curtains. So like the walls are made out of curtains, So when the piece starts, one person is lying down on the bed and the other person is sitting next to the person on the bed. And then the person on the bed puts on the VR headset and has a first, let's say, VR experience. And everything that we've done in the VR world is very much based on the actual physical space. So the whole VR part is just a rebuilding of what the physical set design looks like. So we consciously did something that's not put on VR headset and go on the greatest adventure of your life, flying through space and I don't know what, swim with the whales, but it's like very much a kind of a reduced reproduction of what you would actually normally see around you. And this includes two components. One is the room. So also the physical space is quite reduced. There's this bed, there's a chair, there's one plant. There are the curtains and the structure that holds the curtains. And then there's one monitor. So it's not very much, and there's a light tube. So the whole VR part, we kind of try to build out of that.
Got it. And how many compartments there are?
There are 6. So
are people navigating through that compartments?
No, you stay in one compartment so you go into one compartment and you stay there. At the end, there's a transformation happening a bit with the setting, but you pretty much stay where you are. But in that compartment, you change roles. So at a certain point, you lie down or you sit. You have the VR glasses on and off. So yeah, I can say a little bit about that. But so maybe just as a starting point, so the one thing is this this rebuilding of the physical space, and it is the VR is tracking or is tracked within that room. So meaning when you put on the VR headset, you kind of see the same room that you saw before, but well, the simulated room. So also if you touch the bed, the virtual bed, you touch the real bed. So you got this super weird dissonance in feeling somehow. Sometimes also when the tracking is not perfect, you kind of feel it like a centimeter above where you would feel it or below. So you got this weird friction between these two worlds. So, and like describing the main technology behind it. So one part is the space, the kind of the comparing and the friction between these two spaces. And the other thing is, and that's even more important, are the bodies. So a lot of the development for this piece went into that. What we're doing is we're using the hands and the head rotation of the headgear to track the participants' movement and posture. So that means when you're in the VR world, you also get a simulated body, like an avatar body for yourself. So if I do this, then I would also see my avatar body do this. And so you have a body that you can control in the VR space, which is also fun. And the challenging part for us was that you don't only in the VR part see yourself, but you also see the body of the other person. So each of the 12 participants is tracked in this manner, and all this information then is sent to a server and redistributed to all the participants, meaning specifically when I'm lying on the bed, having the headset on, and the person next to me is having also the headset on, our two bodies will be able to interact as they are in the physical space. So there's kind of there's a direct representation of everything that happens in the physical space. And again, there's this weird friction, artificiality. There are this dissonant or dissociative components of it when the tracking is not completely right. So sometimes it feels a bit like the things are gliding off, but you're able to very quickly use this body, use this use this avatar. So yeah, if everything goes well, then the agency you have and the grounding in that setting is quite persuasive. So let's say that's the technical setup that we have. I don't know, maybe it makes sense to very quickly show
a musical one before that, maybe musical sound part, how it's organized.
Yeah, I can talk about that. Maybe I don't know. I was thinking maybe it's good to also show to just show one or two images to illustrate what I've just been showing. So I think now I'm sharing my screen, and the overall setup that we built looks like, so if we look from the top, here we see the 6 compartments, each with a bed and a chair. And then these things are made out of curtains. And if you look at it from the top, for example, it looks like this. So we see these 6 parts. And if we look at it from the more outside, then it looks like this. And inside the setting, let's see, it would look like this, for example, or like this. So this is kind of the basic setup that is being used. The bed, the chair, these 2 people are participants. And then, of course, there are the performers and musicians. And yeah, I can definitely say a word or two about that also. So yeah, just to give a general feeling for how it looks. Here,
do you have sorry, do you have the same pictures, but maybe from this VR headsets as well? Some pictures.
On the inside, yes, of course. So in the inside, for example, let's see. Let me see. I didn't prepare a picture that shows the original starting point, I realize. So these are parts where the setting is already a bit transformed. Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, I did not put that, but I do have that. So, but here you can see this is already in the VR part where it has moved on a little. But you see the curtains, the bed, and everything. And normally all these things are down. This is how it starts, and at some point the thing opens up. More things start to appear, and you get a more complex surrounding of the setting. So yes, maybe I would say, I think before I describe the performative and musical part, I think I would like thematically first describe very generally what happens conceptually in the piece.
Yes.
So we can also see that in this setting here. Oh yeah, this kind of summarizes a few things together already. So in the preparation of the piece, I've also been in contact with a few researchers, and I was also inspired by scientific experiments that work with that. Experiments that deal with agency, embodiment, and also out-of-body experiences. There's a German neuroscientist called Thomas Metzinger who was who provided a few very interesting insights in correspondence while preparing the piece. So he has done a lot of studies that deal with the question of ego, of the question of how you relate to your body, accept your body, or also the constructiveness of that this body is us. And there are a lot of experiments that gradually show, like the rubber hand experiment, for example, but also other kinds of out-of-body experiments that go to show that this consistency of what we perceive as our individuality, our ego, is not as closely linked to the flesh and blood that we perceive as our body kind of as us, as what we are. But it's possible to change that, to influence that. And I find that very fascinating. And it's it's the studies of Thomas Metzinger, and also I've been in correspondence with the scientist and also VR expert Jonathan Hartz, who also was giving me very valuable feedback in the process. And so one thing we've kind of been integrating in this piece, one could say, is the setup of an out-of-body experience. So when I said before, the piece is about this friction space between the real world and the simulated world, and specifically with respect to the space surrounding you and with your own body or the body of your opponent. And
Yes.
so the first thing the first major thing that happens is that we simulate an out-of-body experience in that piece. So the piece starts like that. The person lying on the bed wears the VR headset and basically sees the simulated version of this room surrounding her or him. And then the out-of-body experience is, some people know that from, for example, from dreams, or there are also other clinical or substance-induced possibilities to achieve something like this. So out-of-body experience means that the view glides out of your body. So what happens here is that over a course of 5 or 6 minutes, the camera viewpoint of the body that you're controlling is slowly elevating, going up like this. And at the end of this time, you look at yourself from above you, but you're still controlling your body. So you're still, when you lift your hand, you are still doing this, but very, very slowly you kind of glide out of it. And it's also amazing, our body is so attuned to this. Even if there's just a tiny offset of like 0.5 centimeter or so, you kind of feel something starts to be wrong. We are very sensitive to that, but we are still able to, even while we're gliding out of it, to be like, to accept this still as our body. So there's a discrepancy of out of which eyes we watch. And so we are not closely linked anymore, as in this kind of looking out of our skull manner to the body that is lying there. So that is the main part. And we can then here see there's a blue person. So the blue persons in this, in both in the reality and also in the VR part, are the performers. So then there's the part where the performer puts a hand on the leg of the participant lying on the bed, and you have this weird discrepancy because your view is floating. You basically see a body lying on a bed, which is kind of still you, and then you're being touched there, and it feels like obviously close to your physical body. So it's about this kind of comparison process. And what we see here is here we see this kind of this shadow body kind of gliding out. This is more an external representation of what is happening there. If you're lying on this bed, you are actually, your view is going like this. You don't see the shadow. The shadow that we see is just being projected there for the second person. So here in the setting right now, we see person A is lying on the bed with headset, and person B is sitting here with the headset in the hands. And that actually also reminds me that there's a big thing that I have forgotten to include in my description. And that is both of the performers have a headset with an individual VR experience, and both are wearing headphones. And they wear it from the beginning on, independent whether they put on the VR headset or not. So both of them over 1 hour have an individual audio track that tells them what to do within the setting. So for example, at the beginning of the piece, the person sitting on the chair has the headphones in, and the voice tells the person, please sit on the chair and hold your VR headset on your lap, don't put it on yet. While the other person gets is offered to put on the headset and engage in that. So that is kind of, that's the basis also for the third level of comparison, maybe, which is the comparison between the experience of the two persons involved. So both of them sees different things, and sometimes both of them are in VR and sometimes they're not. For example, the starting point, now the person is seeing this from the outside. And this is basically the big topic also for this piece, inside and outside, being in your body, being out of your body, being in the space, out of the space, and experiencing it yourself, or experiencing or being empathetic for the experience of another person. So when the piece starts, the first person has the VR experience, and the other person is sitting next to the person and is observing this. I'm looking for a good screenshot of this. I also realized that I've been sharing the screen all the time, but it's probably also not harmful. But yeah, I can't really find a good screenshot for it, so maybe I'll stop sharing for a moment. So when the piece starts, what happens then is one person has this kind of, if it goes well, kind of, it can be a powerful experience, this out-of-body experience. And the other person is sitting by and just looking at the face, looking at this body. And on the screen next to the bed, you see the inside version of what this person is experiencing with the VR inside. So what I'm really interested in is for me, it's as important, this being outside and trying to understand or trying to imagine what is happening in the imagination of this person lying there, and to be empathetic for it, or it's a kind of this act of imagination to try to participate in that, and if you look at just at the face, there's something you're trying to understand what is happening inside, or maybe the existential perception that is happening in that body, and you try to get a feeling for it. And for me, it enables a way to look at this person, to look at this, I don't know, shell of the body somehow, because it forces me to think about the mental process inside. And so it's this comparison between what is inside that head and what is the shell of it. Yes. And the physical bodies and the simulated bodies with their kind of clean pink representation of what a body is. It always is kind of like a container, like a shell, and it's what can this container host, and how much can this container be detached from yourself?
Okay, now I will try to summarize how I understand, and I will ask some questions, okay?
Please.
The first is what I understand. It's all idea about providing for me as a participant experience and regarding my visual perception, my brain, and my body in relationship, right? So you can, with this virtual, you put me in a different, let's say, not ordinary or extreme situations, right? So you're just putting my body out. So I'm like feeling, putting my let's say my visual, my eyes out of my body, looking back, and different thing playing, right? This is the main idea, right? And that is why you are just to as the instrument of that, right? So because from VR you created this opportunity, right? To, let's say, to get me out of to get me out of my body.
It's, yeah, that is a main aspect of it. The even bigger picture is the alignment and comparison between a simulated body and my body, and through that maybe also questioning how, if I say my body is also a model. It is something that is constructed in my brain that that I think of this as an entity that is
Yes.
so, and the same with the space. So it's a comparison process, and it's about the question of the integrity of this, and when you question this integrity, there's something it highlights maybe the artificiality of it, and it's, of course, in a way, I mean, to us, and by default, the VR part that we do, or that we create there, of course, is kind of the artificial world, and the other one is our real world. What I really love about VR is actually the taking off the headset again. So you go into it, and you kind of you adapt very quickly to it. It's surprising. So you're in this world, and then you take it off again, and it's so blunt, or so toneless, or it's also kind of vulnerable in a way. You're kind of just our meets bodies, and the kind of imperfect surrounding where you're in. So it's really going both ways, and to look again at our bodies, or to look again at the opposing body. There's something very, something vulnerable, something blunt, I think, like not colorful, not saturated, kind of I don't know, maybe even a bit boring somehow. But then there's also something very beautiful in that. That's a bit how maybe that's a bit of a spoiler, but that's kind of how the piece ends. You're kind of then everything is super immersed in it. And then the last part is where the ensemble is singing a choir part, and then all the curtains are being drawn up, and you have this big communal feeling at the end. So it's also always, it's very intimate, the whole piece, like just you or just the other person. And then it kind of opens up, and there's the part where the audience is invited to look each other in the eye, to imagine what the others have been thinking. And it's a kind of coming back to our world, and to kind of appreciate maybe the imperfections of it, and to look at our imperfect bodies. And so it's really, I think, as much about the reality of it as it is about the virtuality of it.
Yes.
And yes, so this constant kind of taking headset on, taking it off, facilitates that. And there's I mean, aside from that, there's also a certain amount of confusion, I guess. So on the one hand, there's a confusion between what the two participants, the audience members in the room, see, because they don't always see the same thing. And one person might, for example, see something in reality at that moment, the other one with the headset. For example, if we go to the performers, to the ensemble performing in the piece, Ensemble Lucidine, when the piece starts, they are kind of like, they kind of lead the experience, the experiment or so. So they're wearing blue dresses, and they are kind of, let's say, part of this laboratory. So they help you put on the headgear, they help you put on the headsets, they help you if something is unclear. And then from a certain moment on, they change as the piece kind of goes more in. They change into pink morph suits. So in a way, they are kind of like the doubling of these simulated people in the VR world. So it's kind of, we're taking these stylized avatars of the VR experience and kind of enforcing this on the performer. So we also saw that in the screenshots before. So, and then there's this, what happens then is that in the VR experience, these personas do something. Like, for example, there's a part where they do a ritual with certain movements, and they touch body and do things like this. So one person sees this in VR, the other person sees it without the VR headset, with the actual human double doing it next to the bed in reality. But this is something, there are parts of that the person at that moment lying in the bed will never see, will actually never know. So it's a lot of what the human interaction does of the ensemble and also of the music, of the whole artistic side of it is, aside from kind of leading the experiment, is creating these doubling layers. So every musical event in the piece and every performative action is always in alignment or in contrast to something that happens in one aspect of the VR part. So there's, for example, these ritualistic passages that I talked about. Then there are parts where they play their instruments, and it's a bit in alignment to, I think, how I've been using music now in several pieces, that it's more like a reference sound, a reference signal, or an object that can be compared. So it's a very kind of like really a gestalt, really an object somehow. So for longer passages, they just really have this very stylized choreography of taking the bow up, playing one sustained note, taking the bow away again. And this is then doubled with sounds that you hear in the virtual space. And in the VR, you just, for example, you just see the bow and the violin, for example.
Yes.
But
and what is the role of sound? Knows that it just what is the role of the sound? It just provide to stimulate let's say to facilitate the feeling, or I don't know, to provide some new experiences, or just have aesthetics, have just aesthetical idea. Why sounds are needed, right?
Yeah, I think that's what I was just trying to explain, that the beyond what you see, the sound is a layer also of interconnecting spaces. So you have this thing, for example, where one person is playing an acoustic instrument, which you hear in the compartment very clearly, which is then kind of doubled in the electronic sounds that you hear over the headphones. And you might see it, or you might just see the isolated instrument without the performer in the VR part. So it's I use it, I think you can say very functionally. So functionally in a way that it's some of these passages are very clear somehow. And in order to do that, in order to use sounds as a kind of as an object in space that allows these comparisons. And it's for example, if you lie on the bed, have the headset on, and you see a flute floating next to you, and there's a movement in the flute, and you hear acoustically the sound, which, because the flute is exactly in the same point in the room, comes from there. It also again has this very dissociative feeling to it. It feels kind of unreal. It feels really on point somehow, but it's also, there's something very wrong about it. And so for several passages, what the performers are playing is used in this manner. Then there are parts where they really just perform. So it's really 50% also a performative piece. So where they do these movements, rituals, holding the shoulders and touching the legs and things like this. So all of this is really about the doubling, comparison, not being sure what happened in the VR space, what happens in the physical space, who's doubling what, who has seen what. Then I already talked a bit about the end where there's a very synthetic choir coming through from the electronics, which then kind of fades out and leads over to the ensemble singing, which has a very a very human feel to it, let's say. And so there kind of the music serves as a counterpoint to the artificiality of the whole space. And one thing I also did not mention yet is like how the sound setup works. So I already said that everybody's wearing headphones, and over these headphones, the two participants in the room get a different audio text. So telling you what you could do, how you could experience it. So for example, put on the headset, but not just like functional instructions, but also things like look at the person in front of you, imagine this is a family member. So also the whole setup has a very therapeutic, or also kind of, or a parent sitting next to the bed of a child, or even being in the, it also has a kind of hospital feel to it. Like the basic thing already, lying there with somebody sitting next to you beside your head with the monitor next to you that just this person can see is pretty charged. So this is kind of how it starts with the sound and just voice coming from the headphones, and then as the piece goes on, it has this kind of drag into it. So it also, like a lot of the things I've done, has this kind of more trippy, immersive, kind of transcending thing that pulls you in. So at that point where you glide out of your body, it kind of goes, it keeps the sound from the headphones, but then an 8-channel speaker array around the setting kind of starts to take over, and then what then happens is the curtains go up, the room gets big, and you start to feel the sub basses and the just like the air pressure of the speakers surrounding you. It's really a different thing if you hear even a surround sound over headphones, or if you feel a surround PA. So it kind of, it opens up, it goes wide, and so yeah, it's a lot about spaces, but things that are just for you to hear, things that are very close, something that opens up very wide. Then there's a violin playing just 50 centimeters away from you. Then in the end, there's this acoustic choir singing, but you still hear like the leftovers of an artificial choir over the headphones. So yeah, and then in the middle, there are also some more, there's a very long kind of poetic passage, and that is just very musical in a way. So it's like kind of poetry, or sort of floating through that space, kind of at a point where it's like, I don't know, you're kind of dissociated from your body, and now kind of everything is possible somehow. And then there's just a longer musical passage, which just sort of stands on its own.
Yeah. I have a question regarding this episode, still the dramaturgy, right? So you said there's, of course, several parts, or let's say several episodes which I go through this experience.
Yeah.
And episodes, right? So, for example, how you choose it, right? Why those? Is it like you took, there's like classical myth, right? That near the death, I have the tunnel seeing, or something like that. How you choose those episodes, and why those episodes you would?
Yeah. So, I mean, like the whole dramaturgy of the piece, I think there were 2 driving factors in it, and in a way, these driving factors were so determined in themselves that through that the piece kind of wrote itself. There were not a lot of many different options as far as I see it. So one thing is creating the material of experiences and alterations that we could provide in that room. So let's say this out of body thing, 2 virtual bodies interacting, seeing somebody perform while the other person sees it just as a simulated person. So let's say I had a collection of things that we tried out, and I realized, okay, those things are interesting, those things I want to have. So that's kind of the material, the toolbox, let's say. And the other thing for me was I really wanted to offer over longer passages for both the same experience, but one side you're in and one time you're out. So there's this, it kind of has an ABC version, ABC dramaturgy somehow. So first you do something, then the other person does it, and then there's kind of so that is the basic structure, and then it became more alive, and it's not so A and then B is just the opposing thing of it. So that, but as this aspect was very important for me, it determined a lot already. And then you maybe also have the more pragmatic aspects of it. So you don't want to put on the VR headset like every 2 minutes on and off, or you don't want to change position a lot of time. There's just a certain amount of these actions that feel natural. Otherwise you feel like, oh God, now I'm just carrying out stuff. So it's also about finding a balance to give people the room and the time to explore their body, their interaction, the space in a meaningful way, but also shaping the dramaturgy. So, you know, that it doesn't get boring, but also that you don't feel I'm just an executor here. So it should be about, of course, it should be about the experience of the person. And I mean, that's definitely something with like a lot of the pieces I think I've done is, if you take the people away of it, the participants, the audience, then there's not much left. It's
yes, it's piece which you can experience only there, right? At that time there. Right?
Yeah.
And I have a question regarding how many regarding team, right? What was involved and how many people was involved and what they do. And
yeah, that's a very good question. So we worked with a team of quite a few people in the end. So if I go through one after the other. So obviously there's the VR development part that was co-developed with an institute here in Hamburg, a Hamburger Medienkontor. And in that group, I worked with 2 people. The first one is called Leonhard Onken-Menke, who did the main development of the whole VR part, and he was assisted by Sebastian Olario, who was more in charge of the technical parts of it. So the 2 of them, that was the most intense work aspect, and it also took a long time. So with them, there were, I think, 2 major parts involved. One is really developing the whole technical infrastructure for it, and it kind of, in a way, it sounds simple, or kind of looks simple what we've done, but the 2 big challenges were to get the alignment with the body right, and to get the alignment in the space right, which is also not so trivial, but then to coordinate it between 12 people. So it's like really kind of like a multiplayer online game. And this is like really not a standard application yet. I mean, of course, so yeah, it's that we actually really had to build. And yeah, so a lot of kind of research time went into that. And then on the same side, kind of speaking with the 2 aforementioned scientists to kind of see what effects do we know from science that we could rely on or use to our advantage, maybe.
Yes.
So yeah, that was a very crucial part, and helping with the VR development visually to certain degrees, but and also artistically involved and in the piece and development process was Toby Fire, who kind of was in between the VR and me part. So he was involved in a lot of aspects for the piece. Then there's Filina Levitz, who did the costumes. So she designed the blue institute costumes that you have once when the piece starts, and the morph suit, the pink ones, when you're kind of in it. And then she also prepared kind of modified morph suits that are used in the as video in the VR experience. And then there's the set design, which was done by a collective from Hamburg that is called We Are Visual, and the two people are Mark Einsiedel and Felix Jung. So the 2 of them developed the compartments and the structure of it. So I came up with an initial idea to have these separated rooms, and they then turned it into this concept, working with fabrics instead of fixed walls, and working with with this kind of radiant shape, as opposed to a more geometrical shape, like a more sharp angled rectangular shape. So who else might I be forgetting? I hope I don't forget somebody else. Then of course there's the musicians from Lucilene were involved, so 6 performers of them, and they co-produced this, so a lot of that went through them as well. And it was a joint venture between the festivals Achtbrücken Rainy Days and the Venice Biennale. So we premiered it at Achtbrücken in Cologne, and next is going to be in Venice, and then it's going to be at Rainy Days in Luxembourg.
So I understand, right? Those 2 festivals commissions the work, right? Is it just
the 3?
3.
So Achtbrücken, Biennale, and Rainy Days.
Okay, got it. And what kind of software was used on hardware?
The hardware was, the glasses were Oculus 2, and the whole programming was done in Unreal, and it ran on an Unreal server, which through a wireless router was connected to the applications on the 12 Oculus 2 headgears. Yes, and so that's that. And and the Unreal server application had another video output that had, I've been talking about this monitor that was next to the beds. So that was kind of like the junction between the real world and the internal world. So there was a 6-channel video output coming from the Unreal server, providing the 6 individual images on the monitors in the compartments.
How long it took for your team to
develop the piece? I think like roughly a year or so.
Okay. And what kind of stages you go through?
Maybe I can say, like, for the technical setup, what else was there? So this is the one part. Then there's also an audio computer that does sound for participant A and participant B, and then surround sound in the hall. And the computer uses OSC triggers to control the Unreal server. So it's all done in real life, in real time, kind of command and trigger based. And the same thing goes through the light to change the light setup within the compartments and within the hall. And regarding the development stages, a bit like I said before, we started with, I had this basic idea of the sleep laboratory, and then we started putting it into action a little, and thought and checked out what worked, and had like tryout sessions. Those were like really kind of seeing if the tech works. And what is, I think, always for me super important is that you start kind of with an idea, with a proposal of how to use the technology, but then when you get in the room, you put the bed there, you put the chair there, and put on one headset. You can't really anticipate so well what things are going to happen, or you start to sense a different potential. And that was really like that. So how the piece ended up was not really how I had planned it, I think. So I think for me, it was more about, I think the out-of-body experience was always there, but it was more about dreaming and being in that space. And it turned out to be much more about the body again, and about this, like I said in length already, this comparison project. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm also how should I say that? There are just these topics, I think, that follow through my work that in the end somehow work their way back into what I'm doing. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it definitely happened like that somehow. So, but yeah, I think it was then in conversation with Jonathan Hart, who said, hey, why don't you use the hand tracking to bring that in? And once we tapped into that, we realized, wow, if we do that, there's such a big potential in there, then we really got to make use of it. And it was also Jonathan Hart who gave the who pointed me in the direction of this meditation technique where you simulate your own death, kind of as a technique for, I don't know, reevaluating, I guess. So I found that very inspiring, and that was then kind of in alignment to what I had already read in Thomas Metzinger's work. Then got in contact with him, and he provided some very interesting additional ways of how it could be put further. So yeah, we kind of, let's say, we look for, I think, effects and potentials in this setup to like which aspects felt worth developing. And once that became clearer, I had these components, and then I started and then the kind of more concrete development process started, and then it was sort of half and half. So I started to draft longer sections of the piece in parallel. The VR guys then also implemented that, and we could see what was working and what was not working. It really was a kind of interdisciplinary process where the different departments, I think, strongly influenced each other. I think so the things I'm talking about now, I have been talking about now, are more like how to use the VR part, but the visual part was not so clear at the beginning to us. And we came up with a lot of different interesting looking rooms, but there always was something wrong about it. It was only at the point when it was clear how the set design would look, and we said, okay, we're just gonna use the things that we also used in reality. So we use blue fabric, pink fabric, these metal pipes, the bed, the bodies, and the green screen. So
yes, it seems so. It's more like agile style, right? So that you're just going step by step, solving one problem, and so going step by step, right?
Yeah, it definitely was like that. Yeah, for sure. And it kind of, the different parts sort of informed or influenced, I think, the other parts. Then it became clear that how the costumes would be. And first of all the curtains were pink. Then the set design people said, oh, okay, if we draw one curtain in the back, then there could be another one that is blue. So there's this whole dichotomy of color coding within the piece, going from kind of turquoise and pink, like one being always where you are and one is in the virtual representation. So both in costumes, both in the fabrics, both in the color coding, in the simulated parts. So yeah, it's that for me, that was nice. It was a process where the things got more intertwined as we went on. And it was, I mean, sometimes things like this can be a constraint, but for example, for the visual development of the VR part, we were a bit puzzled because at the beginning, because it's also the thing, you can just do everything, and it felt kind of arbitrary. So now we have this room, or now we have this big hall, or now we have I don't know what, and it didn't feel right to me somehow. It kind of just felt arbitrary somehow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how your cooperation with musicians shapes the work?
Yeah, in general, the collaboration with the ensemble, I worked with them before, so I knew them, and I think they knew what they were up for, and it's the way. So there are a lot of performative aspects in it, but I tried to do it in a way that it is performative aspects that can be handled well with somebody, by somebody with a musical experience or with a musical training. So a lot of the things are very rhythmical. They're kind of very precise in timing. They're not so much expressive acting, or there's no theatrical acting or things like this. It's really it's these formalized gestures and formalized playing, and yeah, that was very very interesting and very helpful also to then see how it worked in the real space. And yeah, I was quite fortunate that they were so open-minded to go into this, also to dress into these weird morph suits. And yeah, it was actually quite a challenge, because then during the piece they also have to change costumes very quickly and go from one thing to another. So it was at least at the beginning it was really stressful, but then we played it for 3 days, and I think we played like 6 times each day, so 6 times an hour each day. Also, like for contemporary music, it's a super uncommon thing, which then in the end it was really like a kind of like a, I don't know, like going to work somehow. It's it became super calm, so that was nice.
Yes. Can you imagine this work without sound?
So, I mean, in the piece there are 2, let's say, sonic components. One is the spoken text, and one is the music and sound world. So without the spoken text, it's impossible.
Yes.
Without the music, I think not like this. I think it would be possible to make a version of that piece without music, but it would need to be redone quite a bit. So there are long passages that are really musical or poetic. So I think these just would not work. They simply rely on the music. So yeah, I think there's 3 parts. One part is that is really just musical. Then there are the parts that are with this kind of sounds comparison part. So that would need to be substituted for something else.
Yes.
And then there are parts that are also, it just draws you, or yeah, drags you in, and it's, for me, that's really part of it. It's such a yeah, kind of also for some of the passages, kind of a holistic thing. So when the whole piece starts, you hear the music coming from the outside for the first time from very far away, super reverberant, and it's like a thing that over hundreds of meters slowly kind of comes into your brain until you are where you are. And then the kind of the end of the piece is a kind of psychedelic, everything, the space and the sound warping and intertwining. So no, it would just be boring without the music. It's so yeah, the music has really different functionalities within the piece, and it's it would somehow be possible without sound, I guess, but it would need to be completely reworked. I think it would be a much more, I don't know, a much more scientific thing. I think the music is also part that transcends the, I mean, a lot of the things I'm also talking about now are more theoretical, more theoretical in a way. But the piece then in the end, I hope, is pretty poetic in a way, I guess.
And do you think, this would be a very crazy question, if you would just upload the sound only in SoundCloud, for example, or play in radio, would it work as a piece?
No, I don't think so. But for me, that's by default, these things can't work. If it would work, it would mean that the audio is so self-contained and so rich of information, it would not leave enough space for everything else in that piece. So for me, it's always a big kind of give and take between the different media, and the media have to leave room for one another. So sometimes also visually almost nothing happens, but that means I'm able to listen to the sound coming in. Or sometimes it gets visually intense, and then the music is kind of just in the background. So I think I think sometimes works are created like that, that you have a, let's say, a full music and then you build something on top of it. I don't think that works. I don't think, because then the other thing is just a surplus.
Yes.
And for me, that's a contradiction in creating a work like this. So if it will work without the music, or if I could take the music and use it as a whole thing on its own, I think it would tell me that something is wrong.
Got it. Previously, right, you work with video headsets, right?
In this piece or in other pieces? Perfect Circle, yes. It was video headsets, and now it's VR headsets. So,
yes. Can you imagine the work with same as the same piece, but instead of VR headsets, video headsets? Mm.
I think I would need to think about it a bit more, but in a way, yes. I think not for 12 people at the same time, because if we wanted to achieve comparable effects for the video, it would be what we would need to do with video cameras to achieve these effects is kind of complicated, but it would be interesting. It would be right now we programmed a lot, and a lot of these things and cuts and stuff happens in the VR part. Like that, you could turn it into a manual piece where you maybe have a copy of the room where an actor in a morph suit is copying your actions, and then the camera is manually taking out and things like this. I would love that. It would be a challenging piece, and well, it would be quite nice actually. I like the idea. I would love to see that piece.
And the last question, right? So, what are, let's say, 3 key learnings, right, from you? What you learn during creating this piece, right? And what would be valuable to know, like young composers or other composers who would like to start working with VR technologies?
So I think, let's say on the positive side, I think a bit what I described in the process, this kind of building the toolkit and then allowing yourself time to play with the toolkit, to honestly question which aspects that you imagined are actually working and which untapped potential might be there. So to allow yourself these stages in the work, in the development process, I think that's, for me, is always super important. There's just, it's so astonishing that you think you can imagine something as simple as a person lying on the bed and a person sitting next to it on a chair. It doesn't get much more simple than that. But it's through doing that and through trying it out with these things, I think I was only able to actually get a sensation for what aspects are worth making the piece about. So I guess that's one part. And another part, which maybe more on a pragmatic, critical side, for at least so technically challenging project like this one, to have clear deadlines when the technical development process is done, and from one on it's only artistic content. So that was a challenge for us, because it's a lot of the things with these alignment and multiplayer server kind of thing and the hand tracking and so on, it's really not out of the box technology. And we've kind of been at it until the day before the premiere. So to say, hey, 1 month before the premiere the setting is like that, and there are no tweaks anymore to the tech part. That's a technical, pragmatical advice. And beyond that, we worked with test audiences also. That's also something I can suggest to be sure to let other people try it out, who are new to it or who don't know everything that you already know. That's very helpful. And that's what comes to mind.
Yes. So thank you very much, Alexander, for this interview.
My pleasure. So I'm going to